So we're calling the meeting to order. This is the Open Space and Ecology Committee meeting for July 23rd, Tuesday. This is a special meeting to work on the review of the draft EIR for the Baylands. So did everyone get a copy of the agenda? Someone like to move to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Oral communications for items not on the agenda. I think we'll pass that since no one's here. And draft EIR for the Baylands. Discussion of chapters 3 and 7. And then we want to have a discussion of reviewing the remainder of the draft EIR. And then we'll do approval of the minutes from the last two meetings and discuss additional meeting dates. Okay, so how as a group, this is we went through chapters 1 and 2. Chapter 3 is the project description. How do we want to go through this and outline our questions? Do we want to go through it page by page then?
No.
I have page by page comments, but
I think I'd much rather have a discussion about have a conceptual level discussion of each topic, and then I think for people who have page by page comments, they could bring them to the meeting, and we could pass them along. Some of them we'll want to discuss, and some of them I think are going to be just kind of not on the level of needing discussion by the whole group.
okay.
I mean, does that make
We're
sense?
going to craft actual comments to put through. We kind of need to do it on how we're going through it. So I think maybe, do we want to first have an overview discussion? Because I don't have it memorized. I highlighted the areas throughout
Yeah, sure.
that I feel doesn't meet the project description accurately, or things that I have questions on. And I don't have it memorized. So what about you? Anyone else?
It's just big and unwieldy.
I like Mary's idea because it sort of sets the groundwork for how the discussion follows, and that way we can build off of that to come at it more systematically, I think. So I would second
And Barbara?
Mary's.
No opinion.
Okay.
I'm
So
it's a beast either way.
Sure. Glenn, you're going to have to share with me or Mary.
Sure. I guess I would like to start out with concept level discussion, and also I'm at a bit of a disadvantage because I wasn't here last time. So I think a concept level discussion would be really helpful. One of the confusing things for me is that there's so much repetition in this document that I'm still a bit, I spent the whole day with this thing, I'm still a bit confused as to just what is the right and most economical way to go through it. But maybe if we start with a concept level discussion, maybe we could figure that out.
Okay. So Mary, why don't you lead the beginning of the concept discussion?
Well, I think it would be especially helpful for
Talk into the microphone.
I think it would be especially helpful for Chapter 7. And, but should we start with Chapter 3?
Yes.
Okay.
Because when I went through Chapter 7, I found it really a little bit challenging to go through all the charts because I feel like I need to do that after I read all of the mitigation measures. Yeah.
So what about the whole DEIR? Because I have a couple of questions that really kind of apply to the whole thing, I think, and maybe you guys talked about them last time, but
Let's hear them because we should air all of that out before we get into the weeds. If you have questions or concerns or how we want to approach it, and I know it was hard that you missed that part where we went through chapters 1 and 2, but let's catch up.
So one question I have about the whole thing, and it's kind of interesting, at the exact same time I was writing notes about this question this afternoon, John Christopher Burr, a lifelong resident of Brisbane, called and left a message on my telephone, and with a comment that I thought was extremely germane and actually was along the same lines I had been thinking. And so my concept level question is, it's not clear what models were used to generate the impacts, for example, greenhouse gases that are listed, pretty laid out specifically in other parts of the document. And so, since I've expressed an interest in, and I guess been assigned to parts of the document that are working on greenhouse gas emissions, I was especially interested in that. But they make claims about greenhouse gas emissions for these various concepts, but they don't really say what are the assumptions, what kind of models they're using. And I suspect that the same sort of thing is true for other estimates of impact in this report. And so I guess that's a concept level comment on the whole.
Trying to get the mic louder.
Maybe I should stop there. Was it something I said?
Wait.
No.
It's still not on. No, it's muted. Okay. There. I got it.
So, oh, yes, you sure did.
I did.
So, what models were being used here? Are we going to be allowed to see those? What assumptions are built into those models about, traffic impacts, greenhouse gas use, and things like that? And it seems to me pretty hard to ask some of the questions I would like to ask, and I imagine some of the rest of us would like to ask, without knowing what those models were and what assumptions were built into them.
So looking at the appendices, I think Volume 2, Section G, which has greenhouse gas emissions, construction GHG calculations, and operational greenhouse gas calculations.
Okay, maybe I just haven't gotten to that part yet.
Right. But the other thought that when Michelle and I were talking about setting up meetings was to have one meeting specifically to invite Lloyd here to have those kinds of conversations. And the thought that Michelle and I had was to have it later on, sometime in August, so that way we could have most of our questions about methods developed, so we could have that kind of conversation. But, that's up to the committee as to how you want to do this.
Well, let me just suggest a couple things. One, did you get a chance to view the 4 sessions that we had with Lloyd?
No, and I'm
Okay.
still playing catch up.
I know. So Stuart, do you still have a CD for Glenn?
I gave away everything but 2 of those last time. So we'd probably have to redo a couple, or...
Okay.
That would help.
And Glenn,
Yeah.
I quickly looked in the first of the greenhouse gas, and they are using IPCC. So, just
Okay, so what I'm talking about, though, is, with the developer-sponsored plan, they assume that greenhouse emissions will be less because people are going to be living there. But what sort of projections of residents' commute patterns are they working with? I mean, San Francisco, according to the San Francisco Chronicle, has got a lot of people living in the city now who are actually commuting to work in the Lower Peninsula. So can we assume that the people who would be living in these proposed residential units would actually be working on the site? That's where you're going to get reduced greenhouse emissions. So that's the sort of assumption that I'm curious about.
Right, so you're not talking like global warming projections.
No.
You're talking about
No.
like Bay Area. Yeah, that would be really interesting to know. For sure.
This sort of brings up, for me, an issue that I was having particularly with 4F, which is the greenhouse gas emissions section. And I thought about why the hell am I having such a hard time reading this? So I sort of went back to high school and did a little bit of a literary analysis, looking at it as an essay, which was perhaps a mistake. But paragraph 1 is introductory, paragraph 2 is introductory, paragraph 3 is introductory, all of page 3 is introductory, all of page 4 is introductory. And then in some here we have like a few facts that might qualify as the body buried into one page of the section, and it goes right on to a concluding statement without telling you any of the supporting facts. So basically, I'm sure this is the way EIRs are done, and I'm sure people know their stuff. But as an actual informational document, it stinks. I'm sorry, it stinks.
So,
And I thought that was, maybe I shouldn't say that as a member of this committee, but I thought the whole purpose of this was to inform the public. And I kind of was like, just appalled. And I don't know what else to say about that, except now I feel like if I'm going to understand anything in this document, I need to go and read the other, 3,000 pages? 4,000
I
pages?
think it's more like 6,000 pages.
Yeah, 6,000 pages of documentation and where they actually come up with this stuff, because like I said, these chapters just go from introduction, this is why what we're looking at, why it's important, to conclusion. There's nothing about their methodology.
Okay, so I asked this question during the workshops with Lloyd Zola. I asked a lot of questions around this, and the answer kept coming back that the methodology was in the appendices, like the models that they used and the details and all of that.
Yes.
And then that if you found that to not be adequate or you questioned that, then that would be something you would make a comment on. Okay, and that seemed to be the answer for every question I had, is that that would be something you would make a comment on, or you would ask a question about. And it was pretty difficult because in some cases they, like for instance on the greenhouse gases, I said, how could you use per capita for greenhouse gases? Well, that's the way it's done, and if you have a question about that, write it up and submit it, you know? And then I asked about how could they decide to use this state average of people who bring their children to go to school where they work. And because originally they were modeling it on Bayshore and Candlestick. And I'm like, how could you think to use Bayshore and Candlestick as a comparison when those are like two of the most poor areas in San Francisco, and we're in San Mateo County, the second highest median county in the state of California. Well, that's why we decided to use the state average, because there was nothing comparable in San Mateo County. And I'm like, well, that's crazy. He goes, well, that's something you should make a comment about. And so that seemed to be the answer for everything.
Yeah.
And so I can understand, especially Glenn, if you didn't attend those sessions, of why you have the questions that you do, and I have those questions also, and that's why I feel like it's one thing to talk about it on a general level of how it's characterized and how you feel about what's been written and explored, but we still have to go through it line by line and do the nitty-gritty work to comment on everything, or else it will just get passed over.
This is going to be an important discussion. I don't think this is an unimportant document.
Oh, it's
But,
I think it's a very important document.
but I also think that the most important environmental decisions about this project are going to have nothing to do with this document. They're going to be value judgments and choices that are made in the course of a political process.
But it's,
Lloyd Zola was at the last Brisbane Baylands Community Advisory Group meeting. And one of the things he said, for example, is that the draft EIR assumes that everybody follows the regulations and the mitigation measures in the law. And the draft EIR does not and will not take up the question of how do you enforce this stuff?
no, CEQA won't take up that question. The draft EIR should take up that question.
He didn't say that. Well, he said, yeah, essentially he said that's not a topic covered by CEQA, meaning this is not a topic that's going to be covered in the draft EIR. That's what he meant by that. So that's all going to be in the part of the discussion about what actually happens out there is going to be based on what can we enforce and what can we not. And part of that's going to be in the development agreement, a very important part. So I think it's, I mean, we could be stuck with this draft EIR for a long time. For it doesn't expire. It doesn't have an expiration date at all. But on the other hand, and it requires some mitigation measures, but the city can certainly require other measures in a development agreement. And I think that's a lot. I think this is a good time to address those things.
I say that from everything that I've learned and experienced and in all the discussions that I've heard, and that if we want the city to have a leg to stand on with those development agreements, then we need to do our work now, because this sets the framework, the legal framework for everything that comes down the pike afterwards. And so if we don't do our homework here and we don't set it up and answer all of the questions that we have and ask those questions before it goes to the council to either accept the final EIR or not, then we will be selling ourselves short. And as onerous as this task is, and it makes me want to cry every time I pick up the binder and start to read, and I get angry about it. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't do the work now, step by step, question by question, if we leave any holes open, they will wiggle through it legally. And we will set ourselves up for a position of having to defend ourselves in a lawsuit that we can't afford. But if we do our homework here at the ground level on every single question, consideration, and concern that we have to the best of our ability, then we give the city of Brisbane a leg to stand on to say, no, you need to do this before you can do that. Because everything that he said is that this is the framework for what we're doing. And it's very challenging because this is a program EIR with project-specific stuff in it for only the developer stuff and not the other stuff. And that is really confusing and really challenging and really difficult. But that's what we have to deal with. And so unless, I don't know how else to do it except step by step, Mary.
Did you, no, I understand that. I don't think each one of us needs to read 7,000 pages of documents. I think that's not going to happen. So we might as well, admit it. But, I mean, did you come to the CAG meeting last week?
Yeah.
Okay, so, people ask different questions, and essentially he said, well, that's going to be a question for the community to decide whether or not they're willing to tolerate this level of risk. And in other words, that's not going to be covered in the draft EIR. The draft EIR is not going to say this is good enough. The draft EIR is going to say this is the legal minimum, and this is our analysis about the effects of the various different projects. And so I think we ought to recognize that too, and And to the extent that to the extent that we think that certain risks are not something that this community will want to accept, that we need to say that also as part of the way that we respond to this draft EIR. Does that make sense? Maybe it makes more sense in terms of specifics.
Yeah.
Coming back to what both Glenn and to what Mary said, and the reason I brought up the fact that this, the fact that you were left with so many questions brought to mind the fact that the actual body of the work seems to be missing from the work. And Mary, to your point that we're not all going to read 7,000 pages, I had originally been a proponent of us reading all through this, but after reading several chapters, I'm wondering, and tell me what you guys think, if maybe we should break it down more so that people can potentially read some of those appendices. Because that's how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling like this has just left me with holes.
Well, I was hoping tonight that when we talked about it and when we go through section 4, that the people who said they had a particular interest in a section would read the appendices for that section as the leader of that section.
Okay.
Because otherwise, I mean, I do intend to read this entire document, but I don't think that I have the capacity or the time between now and October 8th to read the additional 6,000 pages of appendices. And
Exactly.
that kind of brings me to the point where I'd also like to ask for an extension.
Yeah.
And I mean, Stuart, can we have that discussion now or not?
Well, if you want to, you can move to item 5. You can move, if you vote, because I think item 5 is where that's going to be covered, when you just talk about your additional meetings and then talking about asking council. So if you want to have a discussion on item 5 now, that's fine.
I think we probably should, because
I mean, because what you're talking about at the moment is very general things, because item 3 is really talking about sections 3 and 7, and you're really talking more generalities about how you want to handle your meetings. So it seems as if you've morphed into item 5, but I would suggest that, take a vote of the committee to move item 5 above item 3,
yeah.
just to make it seem more kosher.
Do we have a move to rearrange the agenda?
Since that's the way the conversation is heading, I so move.
All agree?
Second.
Okay. And when I asked for the document, Stuart, do you know the tentative calendar that you sent out with what days we were going to discuss which things?
I do.
Could you get copies of that
Sure.
for us? Okay, so for this part of the discussion? I'm sorry, this was this was good, but not what I was looking for.
I didn't get that one then.
Okay.
It's the only one I ever got.
Okay. So when Stuart and I sat down, I should probably wait till Stuart comes back, but when we sat down to go over how much we could cover in the amount of time that we have, after the last meeting, we kind of calculated it was going to take, I don't know, what was it, days. He'll tell you when he comes back, to get through everything that we have. And so we set up meetings on various days of the week. We've got July 23rd, August 1st, August 5th. We have our regular meeting August 14th, a Saturday meeting on August 24th, a Thursday meeting on August 29th, another tentative date on September 18th, and September 28th. And by then, I mean, we should have all of our comments drafted and submitted. But there's not enough time to go through everything between now and then. I spent 3 hours last night just reading the second half of chapter 3.
Yeah.
The second half. I'd already read the first half of chapter 3 and chapter 7, which I realized with chapter 7, it sounds great, but unless you've read all the mitigation measures and understand what they're talking about, chapter 7 doesn't mean anything because it's in chart.
I agree, Michelle, and I would like to add that Mary has CAG meetings. I have, since I'm the OSEC liaison to the Sustainability Committee, I have 6 Sustainability Committee meetings by the end of September on top of these meetings. This is too much.
Yeah. And so if we really are going to do our duty and our responsible job to the city council, then we need a more realistic timeline. It took them 4 years or more, 6 years, to actually do this draft EIR. 3 years from the time that they filed the notice of preparation. And I know 120 days is longer than the normal amount of time that people get for draft EIRs, but this is not a normal draft EIR. This is, an 8,000 page obstacle. And there is a lot of material here, and I almost feel like we're under pressure to review this material, and it would be subject to carelessness because there is so much of it. It's like bury them in paper, and then they won't notice that we want to build on the, toxic landfill. So, I just,
Well, Anya did ask at the first
Thank you,
meeting
Sarah.
if that October 8th date was solid, and the answer was nothing's written in concrete, but that's what's been established, so with that.
well, and also, maybe the council doesn't want to extend the date at this time because they're concerned that people would slack off and wait till the last minute if they extended the date. But the truth of the matter is that we need a reasonable timeline to get through this as soon as possible. We need to set that reasonable timeline because I can't, we have to live our lives too. I have a full-time job, as many of you do.
Yeah, I was just going to say, council, if council objects, they need to be reminded that most everybody on this committee has a day job from which their rent comes. And we cannot suspend our activities at those jobs in order to get this done. So I would favor actually adding that to our request, because personally I feel, after spending most of the day just trying to get through chapters 3 and 7, and recognizing, as Barbara said, that we are going to have to read these appendices, at least parts of them.
Yeah, I had hoped we could skip them, but the document is
No,
not
think so.
written that way.
I don't, as Mary said, I don't think everybody's going to have to read all of them, but I do think we're all going to have to read parts of them. And this is not easy reading, so I strongly favor asking for an extension until, say, December.
Yeah, I'd say December 31st at the earliest. I mean, because then you have the holidays, and, this is a huge document. They'll decide how long, but in the meanwhile, we also have the election in the meanwhile, which will take up a great deal of time. And I don't know, I think that we should, on the city council meeting their next meeting is next Monday night, July 29th, and I think that we should request at that time that they extend the deadline date for the comments due for the draft EIR.
I think there's an item on the agenda to talk about process from here on out. So I think there might be an item on the agenda where that topic would come under.
So,
Should we have a resolution in this committee to be forwarded to council?
Well, I think you can, my guess is, I'm going to make a wild guess here, that the chairperson will be at the meeting on the 29th. And
yes, but I'd still like it to come from the entire
Right,
committee.
but I think what you could do is direct the chairperson on behalf of the committee to make a request.
Then I move that we ask our chairperson to make such a request at the council meeting.
I think there should be a memo from the Open Space Committee to the council members before the meeting as well.
I agree with Mary on that.
Yeah, I do too.
So, Mary, do you want to make a motion, and then do you want a second for your motion, and then a second for your motion, and then let's move forward?
I would like to make an addendum to Glenn's motion. I would like to, so in addition to asking our chairperson to represent us at the next city council meeting and ask for an extension, I believe that, I move that we should send a memo to the members of this, to the city council, asking for such an extension and making a brief description of the reasons why we would like to have that.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And the extension is through December 31st?
That would be my recommendation, but that's not, I mean,
Well, I mean, if you're going to ask for an extension to council, are you going to ask them for a date extension, or are you just going to ask for an extension?
I'd like to ask for a date extension.
But doesn't December 15th maybe make more sense? Because the 31st is after the holidays, or during the holidays, pretty much.
Well, I mean, I would actually argue, why not make it like in January, because everybody's so busy in December that, like, effectively the beginning of December is going to be used for all kinds of other things. You know.
I agree, January 2014.
January,
January what?
31st?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, January 31st,
okay.
2014. And I know that seems like a really long time, and we should submit comments as we go along, but this is an onerous document that needs careful review. Early review shows many, many gaps, even in the project description, which should have been a slam dunk. There are numerous things that are lacking or not characterized correctly or not described accurately or incredibly hard to visualize, like moving, you know.
I have a process question for us as a committee, and that's, as we go through and we make our comments, are we recording or how are we capturing the comments? Because I'd hate to go through them once and then go through them again, or have other people bring things up, and it would be great to have a thorough documentation of the comments, but also a reference that we can say, oh, okay, I see that was already brought up. I don't, you know, unless I have something to add, I don't have to, but I think it'll make our work more efficient.
So,
that's a really good
Stuart,
idea.
do you have recommendations on that?
Sure. I mean, I think we are working on a document to capture what was discussed, with chapters 1 and 2. And I think what the committee had talked about at their last meeting was that prior to the meeting, everybody would submit written comments that we would then distribute prior to the meeting to all the members. If that's still, I'm not quite sure if that's what you're talking about, Kima.
Yeah, I mean, if we had that, I think that would be ideal, because then we have the opportunity to see it before we come in and talk about it. But
Right, but I think that, obviously that takes additional time from the committee members to write up their comments, provide them to staff in enough time to be able to gather them all and then send them out. So, but it's up to the committee and how you want to do that.
But they don't have to be beautiful. And I don't think every committee member will comment on every section either.
The other part that's challenging is sometimes I'm reading it and I'm like, whoa, I don't feel comfortable about that. I wonder what the other members would think, the people who know more about this thing or that thing. As I was reading it, I highlighted every single section where, I had questions about stuff. And so I wanted to, in some cases, get consensus about, is this an important comment? Is this an inconsistency that everyone else agrees with? That kind of thing. So
I'm open to any way you want to do this as a committee. I mean, we are doing our best to write down what you talk about. We will put it in some format. I mean, I think right now, through chapters 1 and 2, I think Christina has about 4 pages worth of comments, page by page as we went through it. So, she's still working through that for chapters 1 and 2. Then based on what you say tonight, we would continuously add to that document. And my guess is by the time we're done, if chapters 1 and 2 took 4 pages, it'll probably be, 80, 90 pages worth of comments when all is said and done. But to me, that's, from my perspective, that's the logical way to do it.
Right.
I'm open to whatever method the committee would like to use.
And let me just throw this out here, and I'm sorry if this is too geeky of a solution or whatever, maybe I'm bringing my day job in, but If we had, so is it even permissible to have some sort of an online document or a shared resource that we can, no. Well, there we go.
No, only because it's not, if it's not available to the whole public, they don't know what you're discussing.
Can we make it available to the whole public? It's certainly possible to give ourselves the ability
I would need to
write-
talk to our city attorney.
Okay.
Welcome to the sausage factory.
Well, so my thought is, if we had an online document, we wouldn't have to have the notes captured once when we put them in, and then talk about them, and then have them captured again. We could really kind of keep a living document as a group, and when people come across a particular section, they could, write it. We could even be in the form of annotated notes on the original DIR. So I don't know. I'm open. If anybody's open to exploring that, we could potentially find a solution like that. But I'm just throwing it out there to the committee to see if people are interested in that.
I can almost hear the words right now that say, that is a violation of the Brown Act.
Right, that's what I'm concerned about.
Right. Well, and to be clear, it is possible to make it open to the public. So if you talk to them, ask them, under the condition that it be open to the public and people can see what our annotations and our notes are, would we be able to do something like that?
Kima, can you make it open to contribute just to us, but then open to view
Anybody?
for anybody?
Yeah.
I mean, people should be allowed to comment on it, just like they'd be able to comment at your meeting. I mean, that would be the concern, is
Right.
if people aren't allowed to comment, then you're not providing them the same opportunity that they would have at an open meeting.
Let me.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, could there be something that just like at each page that says, public comments will be taken at the meeting? Or is that not appropriate?
Well, the concern is that, I'll ask the attorney, but my concern is when you start talking online, you're having a meeting online.
That's correct.
So if you're having a meeting online, you should treat it as if it's a meeting, and any meeting you would have, you would take comments.
So imagine a scenario where anybody in the public can read the document. Only we have the ability to edit the document, but people would be able to comment on the document. So the comments would not go into the document, but the comments would be listed there on the page that the document lives on.
Well, I think anything you would do would be commenting on the document, not editing the document.
Well, that's just the verb that he's using.
Well, there's a difference, because I think what he's talking about is rewriting the words in the document and then having people comment whether or not those words are appropriate,
Right.
as opposed to making a comment, and I'm thinking like a Word document where you have a review and you have when you do track changes, you could delete and add into the document, or you can comment. And I
Yeah.
think what you need to do, I think commenting on the document and then people commenting on the comments and then commenting on the comments. The challenge is how often, do people know when you're doing it?
Right.
There's a lot.
Okay.
The public process hasn't caught up to the public technology. For instance, you can't tweet during this meeting, and you can't receive tweets during the meeting.
Right.
Because
Now you tell us.
You must not be reading my Twitter feed.
I'm really not. Or people can't message you about what's going on,
Right.
because that's not open to everybody in the public having the same access to the information that you have.
Okay.
So that's the Brown Act hasn't caught up
Okay.
to modern technology, and I don't think it ever will, because the idea is that you don't want people becoming exclusive in what's going on.
Okay. I mean, maybe.
I'll check.
Maybe I can talk to you about this after the meeting, and maybe we could dive into it with a little more detail, because I actually work in this space in my day job, so we could explore options or at least have a conversation about it.
Yeah, it might make some sense. Our attorney is here tomorrow,
Okay.
so if you and I can maybe set up, I can give you a call when he's free,
Okay.
so we can further chat
Yeah.
about
Okay.
what the process might be.
Cool. I'm just trying to find a way to make it easier for us to all combine our thoughts without spending a lot of time on the paperwork shuffling part of it. So that's my thought.
I mean, I think if we all just put forward pages, phrases, and paragraphs we would like to discuss in the agenda, and then we can go ahead and discuss at the meeting, I think even that would go a long way to facilitating the process.
I mean, my concern is that people will have comments on, I mean, it's the same question we got into at the last meeting,
Yeah.
where, I think there are people who will have comments on almost every page, and it'll be different people.
Yeah, I'm flipping through my book and going,
Yeah,
oh, awful lot of yellow in here.
Yeah, I was going to say, I sat next to Michelle during the meeting from Lloyd, and I just can't imagine that there's going to be more than 3 pages in a row that, knowing how thoroughly you read it, that you're going to find 3 pages in a row that you're not going to have a comment, and somebody else will probably have a comment on the other 2.
Only if there's 3 blank pages in a row.
I was just going to say, just if it's a page that says this page is intentionally left blank.
Yeah.
Are there any of those?
No.
There are some
Oh.
in
There are a
the
couple.
chapters, yeah.
Yeah, even the maps, I was very
Right.
distressed. I made a comment on one map that is the color codes don't match the colors on the map, and I can't tell what it is. And so then what's the point?
Right. I mean, I understand the onerousness of this task. I understand the idea of asking for more time. I apologize that I think this is I think because we're in the public process. I think if you were not a council-appointed committee, it would be a lot easier.
Then we wouldn't have the same authority.
Well,
Well, we have no authority.
right, you would have the same authority because you're going to be making comments on it.
Yeah.
Just like anybody else from the public will be making comments on it. Other areas where you have more authority than, the draft EIR because you're appointed, but because you're appointed, there, you fall under different, different rules than a private citizen would.
Okay. Dates.
Do you want to go through the dates now, or do you want to?
Well, I guess what I would like to do, if at the pleasure of the committee, is go through the tentative dates that we currently have on the calendar and see if those dates are okay and proceed as if we are not getting more time.
Yeah.
I think that's wise.
And then on our next meeting, which is August 1st, by then we will hopefully know what the council's pleasure is, at least interim, and we can adjust the schedule accordingly. And we'll also have we probably won't have a better idea of how long it takes us to do stuff because we won't have delved into section 4 yet. But at least we'll have maybe a better framework from which to gauge the length of time it's going to take to
So I have
adequately review this.
calendars for this room through October 31st.
Okay.
Because
So,
we do have some conflicts of our proposed schedule with this room.
yeah.
One question, Stuart, do you also have handy the schedule for the sustainability meetings? Because I forgot my calendar, and I think there was one of these dates that clashed. There was this sustainability committee meeting and this meeting on the same night. I think it was on a Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesdays would probably, you're talking about August 14th? Or the
Could be.
18th?
Do we have a sustainability meeting that night?
No, it would be the 18th of September.
Okay, yeah. That was it.
Yeah, there is a potential sustainability committee meeting on the 18th. My guess is if you asked to move the sustainability committee, that would probably be easier.
Okay. So,
Part of it is I'm not here that week, so you're not going to have the same staff available on the 18th either way.
so let's just go through these one by one. The first next meeting date we have is scheduled for Thursday, August 1st. Going once?
I can do it.
Going twice?
Fine.
Oh, one second.
That one's
sorry.
okay.
I wish Sean was here, but,
Sean is not really available until after the 5th is what he wrote in his email.
okay.
That's fine for me.
Okay, so August 1st is our next meeting. The one after that
And
is,
these are all at 6:30, sorry.
yes, except otherwise noted on Saturday, August 24th. Okay. The next one is Monday, August 5th,
And there's a conflict in this room.
which is,
The Citizens Committee, because there wasn't going to be a council meeting, they've booked this room for the August 5th.
Okay.
Want to look at other dates for that week then?
We have to be in this room, I take it.
No, you don't have to be televised. We could record it, differently. It just wouldn't be televised. It wouldn't be replayable.
Well, this is August 5th.
Yes.
Can we bump them? I hate to ask that.
I can ask their chair.
Okay. Otherwise, we can meet on August 5th in the small conference room, and it won't be televised unless
Right.
First meeting, forever.
Yeah. So, August 5th, going once? Going twice?
Fine.
Okay, August 5th. The next date is our regularly scheduled meeting, Wednesday, August 14th. Everybody good with that? Okay.
Fine.
The next date is a Saturday, August 24th. And I know that's hard because it's a weekend day. Every other day that week was full, except for August 23rd, a Friday, which is even less appealing. So, going once?
How long is it going to be taking us? Because I have a conflict for that day.
I do not want us to meet for longer than 3 to 3.5 hours at a time, but because it is just too long to stay focused. So I would say that would be from
I put it down from 11 to 2,
11 to 2.
trying to get it done as early in the day as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, should be okay.
I may or may not be able to make that one.
5 to 8 at the yacht club? Sorry. 5 to 8 at the yacht club?
Yeah, 5 to 8 at the yacht club. So that one's questionable for Barbara. So we'll leave that as a questionable one, but probably.
We have plans, so, I mean, I don't think I can make that one. The odds are extremely poor I could make that one at all.
Okay. And I don't really like the idea of meeting on a Saturday, but, so let's see what the council says.
Unfortunately, if the numbers of chapter suggested topics line up with the weeks, is that your intention?
No, our intention is to adjust the chapters for when people are
Okay.
available who
'Cause-
most wanted to choose that chapter.
That's our 5th week, and the 5th topic is one of my topics, so we would need to.
Yeah, we'll move
Something.
around on that. And the other thing is that we had the grouping document. So, next date we have is Thursday, August 29th.
That's fine.
Going once?
Yeah.
Going twice? Okay, that's a yes. And the next date is Wednesday, September 18th. That is our regular meeting.
And isn't that when we have the conference?
Well, the normal regular meeting would be the 11th. I believe you're out of town that day.
Oh, that's correct. I am
And
out of town.
The 18th is another one that the Citizens Committee is in this room. So we would have to ask them about how do we, especially if it's going to be our regular meeting, we'd want to be in this room. And they've moved before for our meetings.
Okay.
So we could ask.
All right. Because otherwise, I mean, you could meet without me on the 11th, but it's up to you. So, do you want to stay on the 18th? And, okay,
Let's talk about it later.
all right. And
Now
then,
we can say the 18th.
Okay. And then the last was Saturday, September 28th to finalize comments. And that one I think is questionable depending, I don't want to do another Saturday. And if we're allowed to extend the period where we'd be able to chew these off in better bites. And then, but otherwise, is Saturday the 28th of September available for everyone?
Checking.
I have no conflicts at this time, but it being a Saturday, I'll likely come up with one.
Okay, so that's also questionable or dependent. Because the following Saturday is, of course, the Family Festival, which I would hope everyone would plan to attend and have our booth and everything.
The day in the park.
Day in the park, or whatever it's called now.
Hopefully we'll all be working in the booth together.
Yeah. Or our booth will be right next to Mountain Watch booth, and I can put one foot in each.
Nice.
Okay, so then the other topic we looked are the groupings of the chapters together. So did you all get a chance to look at that? So we have air quality and greenhouse gases together, aesthetics and visual resources and biological resources together, cultural resources, public service and recreational services together, land use and planning policy and traffic and circulation together, utilities, service systems and water supply and energy resources together, hazards and hazardous materials and surface water and hydrology.
So, all these topics seem really this seems like a very sensible groupings topically, but did you guys count the number of pages that each of those would cover so that we did not double up, say, two enormous chapters for
Nope.
a big whammy?
We did
Okay.
not. We grouped them
I could do that
together
very quickly.
by subject matter. And what I was going to say is that if we have an opportunity to extend them, we might not take quite such an aggressive stance and be able to cover things more thoroughly. But we really were focused on grouping them together by kind of subject matters.
I had a couple quibbles with that because now I sent this to Stuart. He seemed to indicate I shouldn't be sending it to the rest of the committee, so I didn't.
Okay.
But greenhouse gas emissions can go with traffic
Okay.
as well as air quality. I mean, there may need to be, several different overlaps in here.
Exactly. I mean,
So we have basically four and a half meetings scheduled to review the document at this point in time with 8 different sections. So, we want to take, section 1 and section 4 together on one day. That way you get them all together. That might make sense. My guess is we won't be done in 3 hours, and, bringing in donuts might help. Donuts and caffeine, right?
I hate donuts and I don't do caffeine.
I think,
Red Bull.
that's poisonous. We're talking, bring that on the toxin night.
I think the greenhouse gas chapter is going to engender a lot of comments, or discussion at any rate. The traffic and circulation, I have a feeling it's going to be crazy. So those two, I don't know if we're going to be able to double up with anything.
What I meant was when you're talking about greenhouse gases, those are partly produced by traffic and they're related to energy generation on the site. So I don't know that you would necessarily have to do the whole shootery together. But when you're talking about greenhouse gases, it doesn't make sense to exclude traffic from that discussion. That's all I mean. Okay?
I guess I'm just kind of thinking that we could wait, that neither one of those would make for a good first topic from chapter 4, I don't think.
Oh.
Because I think they're going to be very difficult.
We haven't decided which,
Okay.
this is just how they went together. We sort of divvied them up going, A, B, C, D. It's not the
Right.
order in which we think we
Right.
should do them.
Okay, all right, that sounds good.
Housing is not one of the sections.
Population and housing, yeah.
Oh, population and housing. Did we miss population and housing? No, it's section D, and it should be with
Did I
land
miss
use
it?
and planning.
I missed it.
Whoa,
I'm sorry.
you did miss it. Yeah, good call. Yeah, land use and, I'm sorry, population and housing was to be with,
Oh, you know what it is?
what?
I have it on the sheet as by itself.
You do?
I have it as K. No, never mind. I'm talking to myself.
Okay.
Never mind.
You're kidding yourself.
I'm just talking to myself. Okay.
It was supposed to be
I apologize.
with land use and planning policy and traffic and circulation. Be- Yeah, each one of these is a
Yeah.
lot.
And yeah, it's enormous.
Because there are, what, 16 sections, Stuart? 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yes.
5, 6, 7,
M is letter 13 and P would be 16.
yeah. So, if anybody has any other ideas on how to cram more stuff into less time, we're open to it.
Just to the extent that we can write stuff up in advance. That's the only,
But it still
that I
needs
have.
to be reviewed by everybody, or,
yeah,
Yes,
but
no?
you can also say, yeah, this looks, oh, this is okay,
okay,
right?
yeah, okay.
I agree with all this.
And
So
when you-
maybe then what you do is maybe you write the comments for the next week that we can distribute ahead of time. Nah, it doesn't. I don't know if that works any better. Never mind. Talking to myself again.
Well, when I was going through section 3, I kept thinking, how would I do this? Because I'll just pick one out at random. Okay, on page 3-8. This is under project description. It says, after the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, the area west of the rail corridor was filled in primarily with demolition rubble. As it turns out, that's not true. And there's photographic evidence that Chris Hart has that says that's not true. And this is a major part of the project description. And so how do I write this out? I would say, oh, go to page 3.8, then I would have to type this sentence and say, this is not true. Can you please explain what makes you think this is true, and here's the evidence that shows that it's not true?
So the other way to do it is page 3.8, first sentence, first full sentence, first paragraph. Question the veracity. And that way it would give you enough information to have a conversation at this meeting.
But that's the point, is do we need to have a conversation about that, or do I just say, that's not true?
Yeah, just page 3-8, third line, primarily with demolition rubble, not true, C, blah, blah, blah.
Right. And then
Yeah.
down in paragraph, do you call that paragraph 4? Second to bottom line, it says, after the closure of the landfill in 1967, the area was buried with a 20 to 30 foot cover of soil and has been used for soil and construction material recycling since the 1980s. It was not covered with 20 to 30 feet of soil. I mean, show me the document that says it was. And there is no footnote there that says, look in some appendices. And this is where I'm having a problem, even in the project description. I have these kind of yellow question marks on every single page. It says here, the majority of the project site, this is on page 3-7, first paragraph. The majority of the project site is flat or gently sloping towards the bay with an elevation range of 10 to 50 feet above mean sea level. Really? Show me.
No.
Because that's not what it looks like to me, especially now that they put a big, huge, massive pile of dirt there that's well higher than 50 feet above sea level. And it's certainly not sloping towards the bay. And it goes on and on. Even something that should not, the map doesn't even agree with what they say on section 3.4, paragraph 2. The Visitation Valley neighborhood of San Francisco adjoins the northwestern border of the Brisbane Baylands. No, it doesn't. There's stuff in between. It does not.
What's in between? I'm just curious.
If you look at the map, you'll see that there's land in between, and there's nowhere where the neighborhood actually adjoins. there is one row on one tiny part right here. If you look at map on page 3.5, there is one point right here where it adjoins Old Bay Shore that's not a residential neighborhood. And the rest of it, no. Yeah, pardon?
So I apologize for this, Michelle. I'm actually not taking notes on what you're writing now for the comments. I think, are you just using
Illustrations. So how should we
Okay.
go through this, Stuart? I mean, this is what I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
And I need to ask the rest of the committee.
Right, it's up to the committee. I mean, I would say that, I think unfortunately, a page-by-page review might be the best way to try and, put this out. And, I think, the question is how do you get those kinds of things down on paper? I don't think there's an easy way. My perspective is that it's going to be less time consuming for people to write their notes in their book and just talk about it as they get there, because otherwise it's going to be a process of retyping everything, and then having everybody read everybody else's comments, which will be time consuming. And, the question is where do you want to spend your time? Do you want to spend it?
I want to spend it reading, not typing.
I have it easy because I'm just here to capture whatever comments you have. So it's really, as I say, it's up to you. And I understand what Kima's saying is if you can do something online, it might make that easier. But I'm just, as I said, I have to talk to the attorney to see.
And that's fine. I'm not worried about that. I think any effort that we can make in getting our comments to each other sooner means that we can talk about the salient points, and then the parts that everybody agrees on, or there's no at least that there's no need for additional comments, we can just move forward with it. To me, it does seem like our job is to find all of those things that are inconsistent with our understanding. Like, if it says it's 1 to 10 feet high above sea level and there's a pile of 50-foot high stuff, then that would be something we would say, this is my comment. It does not seem this way to me, or whatever it is. And then we submit that comment for them to reply about. Right? in a nutshell.
That's exactly what we will be doing.
That times 18 billion.
Right. That's where I figure we'll probably have 80 to 100 pages worth of comment.
Right.
And the question I think Michelle is raising is what expedites that conversation the best. And as I said, I'm not sure because my style I think is a lot like Michelle's, where I'll see something, I'll put a footnote on it, I'll write a note on my sheet of paper, and it's easier for me to explain what I'm thinking than to write what I'm thinking.
And then are you going to be able to capture all of those verbal comments into a written document that we can then review?
Yes, that's what our goal is.
Okay. So,
that's why I have 2 days worth of reviewing comments, because I think it'll
Right.
take you 2 days to make sure that we've actually captured comments in the way you want us to capture comments.
Okay, but if we go page by page, things like that you were saying that are inconsistent really don't need to be discussed. They just need to be captured.
yes, but some people might have more additional information to add, like, yes, I agree with that, or Michelle, you're imagining that, and I don't think that's worth spending time on. Yeah. Questions down at this end? Mary? Because then we would have also time to kind of discuss the overall.
Yeah.
We would have time to discuss the overall, we do need to discuss the overall document, but it brings everybody on the same page when we go through it page by page and then discuss, wow, the characterizations of Chapter 3 of the project description are really not accurate. Does that mean then the research that went into what they're going to do in certain sections is not accurate as well?
Well, yeah, all they did was these people did a literature review. They didn't do any original, they did some modeling.
Yeah,
Did they didn't
core
take
samples?
a soil sample. They didn't, I guess they did a walk. I think they did a walk. I think they walked the site in April. But, yeah, so this is a literature review. Yeah, anyway.
Okay, and Barbara?
No comments.
Okay. So, so I'd still like them to go ahead and Mary, I'd love to hear your overarching comments about Chapter 3 before we delve into the nitty-gritty, page by page, problems with Chapter 3. Yes, Stuart?
So, did we decide what was going to be talked about on August 1st?
Oh,
I'm sorry. I figured if we could at least get August 1st so everybody knows what to read.
okay.
I would,
And then you get to the question at the moment is that we've got what I think is like 4.5 days worth of meetings to cover 8 topics. 8 topic areas, which would be, the 16 topics. So you might actually have to double up on that. And I think if you write a schedule for council so that way council can understand that this is not doable, that will make your case stronger when you ask for an extension and say, so if you could fill out this and say, yeah, this is what we would need to do in order to meet your October 8th timeframe. We're meeting every week. We're meeting 3 hours every week. And it still means that we probably won't have everything done. Whereas if you give us an extra 8 weeks, we can then stretch this out. And here would be a more reasonable way to do it. I think that memo to council will make sense.
good point.
And so, I would say spending a little bit more time on that aspect at the moment and not, if we don't get all the way through chapters 3 and 7 tonight, because at the rate I'm dragging you guys through this, I don't think we will. But I think that's also telling.
Yeah.
Is that, you say, we've gone through 3 different chapters. The 3 chapters each took an hour each. So, in order to get through all of this, we would need 30 hours worth of time. And we're trying to squeeze it into 15 hours. Things like that in the memo and things like that for the chairperson to talk about to council, I think will be as persuasive as possible.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. So let's, glad I brought the big boy with me.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
Because I just read the section on aesthetics and visual resources. And
Just right now?
yeah, while I'm sitting here.
Wow.
And it's very interesting. I think in some ways it'll be easy to look over. They did do this modeling, or I guess Diet and Bhatia did the modeling. And these pictures are really something. So I actually think that would be a good one to start with. And I don't see why you couldn't put it with biological resources.
Okay. I have a lot of comments about,
The biological resources?
actually about the aesthetics and visual resources.
Oh, okay.
Because even in the project description, numerous times they talk about Brisbane's view shed.
Oh, yeah.
But we are part of a larger community. And one of the greatest joys that I have, well, I wouldn't say it's one of the greatest joys, but one of my consistently happy moments on a regular basis is when I'm coming home from after a long, grueling day at work, and I come down Bay Shore, and I see the mountain, and I smell the mountain, and then as I'm driving on down Bay Shore, and I'm looking at the mountain and checking out the weather and the fog, and while I'm driving, I'm also paying attention to my driving, but that moment when you come down and see the mountain, and already the view shed from Bay Shore and from the bay is being destroyed by the piles of dirt. I can only imagine what it's going to be like when there's giant buildings there. And also, I sail a lot, and from the bay, there's really horrendous, impacts for the views. And I've been in communication with Brad Block, who represents the windsurfers at Candlestick Point, and they're extremely upset about all of this.
There may be a lot of comments, but what I hear from Mary is it's an easier read. It may be it may be an easier read
No.
than sections.
No, I don't,
Oh.
I don't,
I thought you said it was compelling. That's what I.
it's not, there's a lot of pictures, so it's not as long as it looks, But I think it's a good starting point.
I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
I think it'll help us conceptualize the projects that are discussed.
I mean, what I was hearing from you is that would be what you would suggest for August 1st.
Yes.
Yes.
I want to interject and take this committee off course briefly. I just did my best to total up the number of pages we got to review for each thing.
Okay.
And most of them are pretty manageable, except for, pretty consistently large, let's put it that way. Except for number 4, land use, traffic, and population comes to 249 pages or something, which is about twice the size of most of the other groupings. And so I think that maybe...
Do you have the page counts for each group? Each
I
section?
do. I
A,
did the-
B, C, D?
Yeah, unfortunately I did it by the titles and not by the section,
Okay.
because what was given here on the list was the titles and
Yeah,
not
because we had
number.
this list too.
Yeah, unfortunately I used this one, so
Okay.
I could collate that really quickly. So air quality was 52, greenhouse gases was 23, aesthetics was 42, biological resources was 73, cultural resources was 35. You guys want me to keep reading?
Yeah, yeah.
That? Okay. Public services was 32, recreational services 26, land use and planning 54, traffic and circulation 151, and population and housing 34. I lost my place.
Utility service systems.
There we go. 59 for utilities. Energy resources, 20. I boggle at how that can be a short chapter.
But it's per capita, my dear.
Yes, and traffic and circulation is obviously the most important issue. So hazards and hazardous materials, 102. Surface water and hydrology, 39. Geology, 51.
And that covers it. Oh, no. Noise and vibration.
36. And then alternatives was 66, and growth-inducing blah, blah, blah was 52. So,
Well, yeah, I think traffic and circulation is going to be its own topic. I don't think we're going to be able to
I think we
smush that up with something else.
I think we might meet, well, I was going to say we might be able to lump something small within it, like
Yeah.
greenhouse gas emissions or energy resources, but
I think there are times when some of these are going to get brought up more than once, for instance.
yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yes,
I was just
absolutely.
thinking in terms of how much reading we're all obligated to and making it palatable as possible.
Well, and I was thinking about how they went together in terms of,
Both are, yeah.
and
absolutely
the
valid.
page-by-page comments that we're going to need
Yeah.
to make as well.
And so I think what you did works fine, except for number 4, which is just too much.
Yeah, so we just take out traffic and circulation and put that in a separate group.
That leaves us with a really small one.
Which one? Land use planning, policy, and
Those
population?
are both relatively
housing?
small, yeah, so.
Yeah, but they're long subjects to discuss.
Yeah.
All right, well, I mean, these are all long subjects in their own
Yeah.
right. Just from a practical, from a numerical perspective, could we move land use and planning somewhere else? And still have it make sense?
Maybe with aesthetics and visual resources? I mean, I think, do they go together? I don't know, but
One of the things that really goes together about aesthetics and visual resources and biological resources is that aesthetics and visual resources talks about light, the impact of the addition of light.
okay.
And that's gonna have a big bird impact.
Yeah, I was just thinking the land use and planning drives
I know.
the aesthetic.
But there's gonna be a lot of overlap,
There will be.
yeah.
Or you just say, take traffic circulation out by itself, and now you have 9 topics to try and,
That's what I said.
Squeeze into
Take
4.5.
that out and
I think so.
by itself, it's going to be a,
and the suggestion that I had was maybe at your August 14th meeting, you'd take on one chapter. Maybe traffic and circulation might be that one chapter on August 14th.
Okay, that works for me.
okay.
Because, what I was thinking was that you had, the August 1st for chapters to be available, August 5th, one chapter on the August 14th because you had other things you were going to probably do that day, then August 24th. So now we're down to, 8 things in 3 days because I don't know if we're actually going to, or 9 things in 3 days because I don't know if we're actually going to get through anything tonight if we want to go home by 9.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I have an early day tomorrow.
Okay, do we have a plan for August 5th?
For August 5th,
So far I've heard aesthetics and visual resources along with the biological resources.
that's August 1st.
Oh, August 1st, you're right.
Okay. Monday, August 5th. Anybody have something they want to definitely go over that night?
Recognizing Sean will not be here.
Huh?
Sean will not be here then either, I don't believe.
Oh, so we can't do geologies, we can't do utilities.
Right.
And should we, well,
I'm guessing the biological resources discussion will segue into the Monday, August 5th meeting.
but for the purpose of our current scheduling to show to the city council, we need to choose one, so let's choose one, or choose one of these categories. Do you want to do
Wait a minute, when are we going to do chapter 7?
chapter 7? Oh, right.
The ones
Are
for
we going to
tonight.
finish chapters 3 and 7? I mean,
Yeah.
we're not going
Okay.
to get done with that tonight.
So I think chapter 7 needs to move way out past all of this stuff to the end.
Okay.
And the reason why is, once we do all the rest of the work, chapter 7 will make more sense. Because I
You
read
wanna,
chapter 7, and you really need to understand what all the charts and mitigation measures are, and until we read all of this, it's putting the cart.
Yeah,
before
it
the
doesn't
horse.
make sense to, I think we're going to comment on all those mitigation measures
Right,
in the,
right. So,
yeah,
we're moving chapter 7 down to,
yeah.
way later.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a general discussion too, because we'll already have specific comments on all
Yeah.
those mitigation measures.
And we already know how we feel about our definitions of sustainability.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay. So Stuart, we're gonna not discuss chapter 7 tonight. We're gonna put that down at the end of, after alternatives.
Glenn, you're making
impact
faces.
overview.
I think we could do it with traffic.
I'm sorry, I
Chapter
was
7,
making
no.
faces.